please introduce yourself and tell us why somebody would be interested in listening to what you have to say. Why should we listen to you?
Thank you so much for asking this question, Tim. Hello, everyone. I am Madhurima Sappatti. My name goes like a wave, so it's Madhurima. And I am a global stress management facilitator who loves to support multi-passionate, ambitious dreamers manage their stress and prevent burnout so that they can do all the things they want to do without their own selves holding them back. I'm currently on a mission to make stress management fun so that people can use and create wonderful strategies that are exciting to them and that adds to their life instead of taking away time from their personal and professional lives, and that it is fun to do on a regular basis so that they can prevent burnout. Why you should listen to me? I have been stressed out pretty much since I was a kid. Solely because, not because of bad family or bad society or anything along those lines, but really more so because I was a super ambitious kid. I still am, but back then I didn't know how to harness this stressful energy properly, and I would constantly fall sick. This kind of carried forward throughout my life. I experienced two major burnouts. One when I was preparing for pre-med and I didn't get through. I'm not going to blame anyone, but competition here in India is crazy high. So I lost out on my seat by a couple of marks and I was pushed back thousands of kids. That happened again when I took a drop year to prepare once again for the medical exams. And when it happened the second time, I was experiencing the biggest burnout of my life. I would go blank, I would start sweating, I would be blank, I would want to run away from the examination hall and just go back home. Decided to do something else. Fast forward, experienced my second burnout in 2019 when I was working in a digital advertising agency as a content creator in a really toxic workplace. And that was when I experienced my second major burnout. I was this close to losing my sanity. I'm not even going to lie. At least from my personal perspective, I was losing it. That was when my mom was like, you know what? I think you need to quit. You need to take care of yourself. And I was like, no, how can I? I'm the source of income right now. We can't do this. And she was like, I would much rather have my daughter than income flowing into the house. And so I decided to quit thanks to her support. Joined another company, had to quit because of the pandemic. For a super ambitious kid, that's losing out on two jobs in the span of 6 months and going backwards instead of going forward. And I was pretty lost. That was when I was introduced to spirituality once again. I was reintroduced to spirituality, I should say, and got introduced to coaching, decided to help people get back to themselves, added burnout to the mix when my mentor asked me, this is amazing, you're helping people get back in touch with themselves, but what else? That was when I realized that, oh, I was burnt out in 2019. By then, I didn't know any idea I was burnt out. So, I was burnt out. A lot of people probably don't have the awareness just like I didn't have it. And so I wanted to help people manage their burnout. And I realized that burnout is nothing but improper stress management over a long duration of time. So manage your burnout regularly and properly. You don't burn out. And I would much rather work with people to prevent it than to wait till they are already in the dis-ease of burnout. And much rather people avoid it as much as they can and practice healthy habits that helps them prevent that. So yeah, that's my story. That's why you should listen to me. I think so.
What question or questions do you think we should be asking ourselves about transformational workplace culture and leadership?
I think because I'm coming in from a stress management perspective in this entire podcast interview, it would be, how can stress management transform a workplace? Or how can leaders, or no, hold on. How can stress management transform a workplace? What do leaders benefit from learning stress management skills? How effective is stress management skills in a day-to-day life, maybe? Like, how does it affect the culture on a daily basis as opposed to only when people are stressed out? I think top of the mind, these three come up. But if, I'm down to go with the flow. You ask me random questions on the spot that actually ignites my brain cells to go like, oh yeah, that's such a cool question. I'm gonna think about it. So yeah.
Right. At any time in the future, if you think of an answer or another question that you think, because this is actually something about the reticular activating system.
Yes.
In the neuroscience, basically simply talking about something or thinking meaningfully and reflecting on something primes your brain to notice things in the environment that were always there, but were never noticed.
Mm.
And your brain does that on purpose because you only have so much attention.
Yeah.
So it could
I
be
love
either
that.
one. Yeah. So the next one then is, what are the most significant challenges you face in transforming workplace culture and leadership?
I think it's about, do I jump right into the answer or?
Sure.
Yeah. I think it's about breaking down those barriers and destigmatizing the concept of stress. I think in today's day and age, a lot of people talk about stress, a lot of people talk about burnout, but they don't know where to go from there. It's a conversation starter for sure, but a lot of people don't know what to do about it. And I think this has been pretty common across a lot of places, because I remember when I used to experience a lot of stress related health issues, and my doctor used to be like, "Oh, you're just stressed out. Don't take stress." And I used to be like, "That's it. That's cured my entire stress. Thank you so much for that." And I would receive this answer multiple times from a lot of people. You know, when I'm going through difficult situations, people would come up to me and go, "Why are you stressed out? Don't take stress." I'm like, "That's not how it works. That's not how it works, because my brain is already in the stress response. What can I do about it? There are no answers." And I think one of the biggest issues is to raise awareness around stress, to make sure that people understand that stress is a normal part of how our body responds to any perceived or real threat. But that doesn't mean that we need to stay in the stressed out space. Another thing is, employees don't need to prove their worth by showing out how stressed they are or how burnt out they are. There's a huge myth that, oh, burnout is a badge of honor. I mean, if this person is burnt out, that means they have struggled hard enough. Chances are they're potentially just sitting in front of their computer all day long in that stressed out space where they're blanked out, but they're still sitting there and they're still working. They're trying to push out stuff when their brain is not functioning at the highest potentiality and at its highest productivity and efficiency, because we are so attuned to, oh, 9 to 5. You got to sit here, you got to sit at your desk, and you got to push out productivity. Sometimes productivity occurs in 2 hours and you get most of your stuff done. But there are those concepts of understanding what traditions we need to keep and understanding what we need to transform. I think with the traditional aspect, a lot of people either get hooked onto it or they forget all about it. There needs to be a good balance of that transformation happening in a way where people are able to be a part of that process and learn how to manage the stress efficiently. So I think that would be one of the biggest things as well. Like, people are so used to being like, oh, but this is how it always works. This is how it's always worked in our company. Yes, but is it serving you? Yes, but is it helping your employees today? Yes, but if it is working, then why are your employees experiencing stress? Why are your leaders experiencing stress? A lot of times, I think we also forget that. We forget about the fact that good leaders who are managing amazing employees in ensuring that they are working in a wonderful culture often experience a lot of stress to maintain that culture as well. But that's forgone. That's like, oh, but you're just delegating your work. You're just managing people. Why are you experiencing stress? Exactly. Ask those questions. Why are you experiencing stress? What can we do to ensure that these stressors get reduced? What can we do to support you? I think those conversations are amiss. And ensuring that you're able to hold those conversations in a way where you don't get defensive when your employee or when your leader responds to a question that, why are you experiencing stress? Or is because this work culture is damaging my mental and emotional state. This way of working doesn't work for me. If your employee responds with that and you respond by getting into defensive, is defeating the purpose. And so
Yeah.
there are, I think, a lot of these areas that need to kind of be focused on when you're working on stress management. And I think those are some of the biggest obstacles is destigmatizing stress, having conversations around it, having conversations in a way where you don't get defensive. And if you do get defensive, because let's be real, everyone is, especially people who are really passionate about what they do, they can get defensive when someone's like, oh, but it's like, oh, your baby can't really run that well. Did you notice that? Your baby can't talk that well. Did you notice that? It's normal to get defensive. And so if you can get, or if you have noticed that you get defensive in scenarios like these, when you want to hold a safe and non-judgmental space, but you can't control how you respond when conversations are happening, that's all right too. But in a scenario like that, bring in someone else. Bring
That's a
in
good
someone
point.
else who can look at it from an outside's perspective. Oftentimes people also get stuck in that tunnel vision. Oh, stress. We're gonna find out what causes people stress and we're gonna get to the end of it. Yes, but they forget about all the other things that's happening in the background. We forget about how people sometimes tense up because they're afraid of, if I say this, will I get fired? If I
Hmm.
say this, will I have repercussions? If I say this, does this mean that I might not potentially get promoted? Right? You have all of these things, but people sometimes can get too focused on finding the answer that they forget about all the surrounding things that's happening in the place and during the conversation. So I think having someone else come in, not necessarily me. If you want me, hey, I'm here. But also bring in someone else who can look at it from an outsider's perspective and give you an eagle-eyed perspective of what's happening so that you can move towards the answer quicker. I think that would be my response. No, I was just saying, I see a lot of Korean shows because that's my guilty pleasure and a way for me to relieve stress. And I have noticed a lot of people going into emergency rooms and being hooked onto salines because they've been overworking and not drinking enough water, eating enough food, and they're literally fainting because of exhaustion.
Hmm.
I don't understand why we as a culture create the necessity for something like this to happen. And I'm just saying from a viewer's perspective, I don't know how much of it is real and actually happens in Korea.
Hmm.
But just being in that spot where you are overworking yourself till you're fainting, till you're dying, like you said, it doesn't make sense. Like, what then? What happens next? And one of the things that my mom always tells me, and this is a Bengali phrase which goes, Ami bachle bapir naam, which basically translates to, if you live today, only then can you know, ensure that your father's name is spread around the world.
Hmm.
Basically, meaning like, family is honor. You want to bring honor to your family, great. But that can only happen if you survive. And that can only happen if you live to another day. If we are overworking ourselves on a really huge project that's going to make our legacy shine brighter, but we die today just before the implementation of that project, what's the point of it all? Why
Right.
live like that? I don't
Yeah.
get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
She was the one who's like, live today. Then we'll figure out everything else that needs to happen. But you gotta live today. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That's a good and wise point. Okay, so the next question is, could you describe a recent situation where you felt that a leader could have benefited from additional training or guidance in culture building, leadership, or both?
Hmm. I think one of the biggest thing that comes to my mind is communication.
Hmm.
I think communication, and I don't know if this is like a proper response to your question, but the thing that came to my mind was communication or the lack thereof that often leads to a lot of misunderstandings, a lot of stress occurring because there is friction occurring between what is being communicated and what needs to happen. It's almost similar to expectation versus reality. Someone's expecting this, the reality is being brought forward in a completely different way. It's happening because of the miscommunication occurring between a leader and a team. And I feel like while this is pretty simple, it is also one of the leading factors of stress in a work environment. And so potentially ensuring, and once again having conversations about, well, if communication is a big stressor that occurs between teams, how can we train the leaders as well as train the employees to ensure that there is proper communication happening? You train the leaders, they have a new set of rules. the team works on the old set of rules. You need to ensure that the training is happening both with the leader as well as with the team, or there is at least a common ground where people are able to have conversations that this is the new set of rules we are implementing. This is how we're going to work starting forward. What are your thoughts about that? What can we do to make this transition easier for you? How can we transform this workplace in a way that all of us are evolving, not just me in my leadership style, but you in how you do your work and how efficiently you can do your work while ensuring that you're not stressed out or burning out because of a simple concept, communication or miscommunication.
So I'm going to dig deeper on this question. Can you think of a specific situation in the client work that you've done where you've went, okay, this leader needs training in something, whether it's communication or something else?
Yes. So ensuring that my client stays anonymous. One of the things that I did notice was the communication skill, was the gap that was occurring between what was being conveyed and why it was leading to so much stress within the organization and within the team, was because this leader had huge goals and huge aims that they wanted to achieve, but it wasn't being communicated properly. And so there was almost a gap between what was being expected and what was the reality of the entire situation. And which is why we kind of worked on, well, if communication, which was the biggest stressor that came up in the team response as well as in the leader response, if that was miscommunication or communication was the biggest issue, then what can we do to bridge the gap? What can we do to ensure that this is being conveyed in a way that ensures that everyone is on the same page?
Okay, so the next one is, what specific outcomes would you hope to achieve through training in leadership and culture building?
I think what I would expect is a healthier work culture, a culture that works both for the leader and for the employees. And the reason why I say that is because oftentimes, once again, it's the miscommunication aspect, right? This is the one that I've seen a lot of times in my work, is the fact that you're trying to build a healthier culture, but it's a quick ass transition. So you go from, oh, this wasn't working, to, oh, this is what we're doing now, but there was no gap, there was no transition. And so one of the things that I try to ensure is that we are able to do this in a way where everyone is satisfied with the end result, or at least it's a starting point towards satisfaction. And so that is one of the biggest things, is to create a healthy work culture that works for everyone and not just for a specific part of the company, not just for the leaders or not just for the employees. Because sometimes that's happened as well. You create a healthy work culture for the team adapts quickly, the leader doesn't. And so now the leader is stressed out and the leader is experiencing like, oh my gosh, there are so many new rules to go by. How do we go about this journey? And so it's to ensure that there is a healthy workplace that's being created and a healthy work culture that's being created on both sides of the scale.
One of the biggest consulting firms in the world has that statistic that most change efforts fail, and it's usually because of lack of buy-in from parties involved in said change effort.
Yeah. No, I completely agree to that. I would like to add on to a point that I have actually talked about a lot, is the fact that oftentimes one of the things that we do is we create a survey for employees to kind of talk about what are some of the reasons why you experience stress in your day-to-day life. And usually we kind of pick up patterns from them that, oh, this is something that's happening. This is something that's happening from a broader perspective. And then there is this need for leaders to be like, okay, yeah, here's what we can do. Here are some solutions we can implement. But then there needs to be a conversation that happens with the employees to talk about, well, is this something that will potentially work out? Which is why one of the things that I often suggest is break your teams into two, right? One that experiences burnout and one that doesn't, or has experienced burnout in the past but is not currently experiencing burnout. You have a conversation as to what led to the stressors. And then you have a conversation, bring them into that conference room and talk about, these are some ideas that we have to tackle your stresses. What do you think about it? What are some of your potential solutions to ensure that this doesn't happen again in the future? And then you don't just leave it there. You also bring the common solutions that came up with the other group that isn't currently facing burnout or has faced burnout in the past, and you have a conversation with them like, do you think this would work? What are your thoughts on it? You're not currently experiencing stress, but were these some of the reasons why you experienced stress in the past? Were there some other reasons that you experienced stress in the past? And what are some of the solutions that you would like to add on? And then you bring the groups together and you kind of have a bigger conversation about what are some policies or some things that we can get started on right away. Because once again, you can't jump into the entire scenario like, yes, let's create 10 things that we are going to follow. No, 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 that's not going to work. That's going to end as quickly as it started. What are the simplest steps that we can take to ensure that this doesn't happen? And how can we add on to it? And so, once again, having those conversations is really crucial because you're not just coming from the assumption of this might work. You're coming in from the confirmation from your team and from your leaders that this is something that they think will work. And there are higher chances of success when you kind of come in and start working from that perspective.
Have you ever done anything like that where you went, okay, what is happening with the unstressed people and what can we learn from that?
This is a work in the progress. I'm going to be real with your team. This is something that I have kind of noticed after working is that, oh, maybe you can do something like this. So this concept is a work in progress because you need to ensure that when you are separating the groups, the people who are burnt out are not in a space of, oh my gosh, they've separated us. What's going to happen? Are we going to get kicked out? Like, no, no, no. How can we ensure that it's a safe and judgment-free space for them? So it's a work in progress. I'm still working on it. But I absolutely love what you said because I don't remember who said this quote, but there was a quote about how sometimes the biggest solutions are the simplest solutions. It's simplicity. It's at the very core of it all, simplicity. And when it comes to stress, here's the thing, stress is very unique for every individual. What could potentially stress me out could be your zone of genius and vice versa. So I'd be melting into a puddle here and you'd be like, oh, I got this. This is pretty easy. Like, no stress about it at all. And so everyone experiences stress differently. What works with a lot of people who don't experience stress in their day-to-day life is there are chances that when they have had a stressful day, after coming back, they do something to de-stress themselves, right? So there are stress relief activities that they take part in that ensures that their body gets rid of all the tension, all the chemicals that were running and creating havoc in their body are kind of released in a way that's healthy for them. And they come back to the normal. They come back to the normal instead of being at the highest high or the lowest lows.
Right.
And the thing that amps up this entire process, if they then go ahead and think about, well, this is something that led me to experience stress today. And I've noticed that this thing keeps happening multiple times. I've noticed it in the past. I might potentially notice it in the future that this one thing leads me to experience stress every single time it happens. And so what can I do about it? What can I do to either change the situation or change my perception of the situation? Those two things together is the best stress. Like this is the core stress management hack that I tell to my clients all the time. It's two very simple things. You need to work on your stress relief, which can be fun. Doesn't need to be annoying. It doesn't need to be like sitting in a spot and meditating for 30 minutes when that's not your jam. Okay, do something else that works for you, that helps you relieve that stress. But then also talk about or think about what can you do to change your perception or change the situation of what leads you to experience stress every single time a situation like this occurs. And so that together creates the ultimate stress management routine you could ever create for yourself.
In your opinion, what are the key skills and competencies that leaders should possess to create a thriving organizational culture?
Communication skills for sure, because we've been talking about it from the beginning of this podcast. Listening skills, really, really huge. Can you listen without the intention of responding? Which is a very unique thing because I think even I, as a coach, sometimes can kind of slip up in the skill. So it takes practice and it takes a lot of awareness to figure out that, I see that you've slipped there. Do you want to kind of take a breather and come back into the space with a clarified mind and not from a space of, I need to respond to whatever they're going to say. So awareness around your listening skills is also really crucial. Like what are some of the signs that you can see when you feel like you're not listening actively and you're listening just to respond. And that involves, am I drifting off? Am I thinking of solutions instead of listening to the person in front of me? Stress management skills for sure. Stress management, guys, it's a skill. You can learn the skill. It's not rocket science. It's very simple. At its core of it all, it's very simple. The more you play around with stress management skills, the better you get with your own stress management, as well as with figuring out whether your employees are experiencing stress, so that you can then go ahead and create that safe environment for them to work in. So yeah, communication, listening, stress management skills, and the ability to hold a safe space. I think that's really crucial. Can you have conversations without getting triggered by the conversations? Can you have conversations without getting all your defenses up? Can you have conversations where you are noticing, listening, hearing, and seeing them? Or are you in a space where you can kind of get lost in your own sauce, basically? So I think those are the four crucial skills, but I'm biased. I'm speaking from a stress management perspective. And so I would really invite all you guys to listen to all of Tim's other podcast episodes if he's asked this question to other people and what their thoughts are on this. But I'm speaking from a stress management perspective. Is these four key skills I feel is really, really crucial when it comes to at least helping people manage the stress within your organization, so that there is a healthy culture around it. Boundaries, setting boundaries, and also setting boundaries and letting people know that it's okay to set boundaries. Like, you're not going to be judged or punished for setting boundaries. There are a lot of times when this happens where people are like, oh, 9 to 5. Okay, I've finished my day's work. I'm clocking out at 5 o'clock. And then a lot of other people go, but you can't. You gotta work here. Are you not passionate about this job? Why are you clocking out at 5 o'clock? And leaders sometimes, throw the scornful looks at them without intending to, but also like, you're leaving early, huh? That's fifth time in a row. What are you going to do by leaving early? Why are you not here? So ensuring that you are setting boundaries for yourself, as well as ensuring and letting people know that it's okay to set those boundaries. And the best way to do that is by starting with yourself as an example, as a role model, that it's okay to speak up, it's okay to set those boundaries, it's okay to have conversations around stress, it's okay to have conversations when you're struggling and you need support. You can reach out to me, and I'll do that by reaching out to you as well. Sometimes there will be times where we have to remove these barriers, and I have to let you know that as a leader, I'm struggling with this particular aspect of managing this team and working with you guys. So what are your thoughts on this? What can we do to remove a bit of the stress from me and ensuring that you're not stressed out in that experience? So once again, it's a two-way street. You can't expect one side to be stellar and the other side is not showing up in its entirety. It needs to be a good balance. And if sometimes the leader is at, this is something that I once heard in a podcast. Sorry, Tim, I'm going off. You have to let me know when I have to stop talking, because I can go off. But I was listening to this one lady in a podcast clip, and she was like, she and her husband often have this understanding that they can sometimes not show up at 100 every single day. And so if someone's not at 100 and the other person is, or if someone's at 60 and the other person is at 40, they're going to make sure that it's at least an equal balance. At least the person who has a higher, at a higher rate at that particular point of the day can show up for the person who's not. And I feel like that example can very well transition into a leadership position as well. Is if the team is not feeling up to it, can you as a leader step up? And if the leader is not feeling up to it, can you as a team step up? Is there going to be a good, healthy balance between you guys? And balance is not about, oh yeah, it's 50-50. It needs to be balanced properly. Balance is, if one side is overweight, can the other side show up and ensure that the weight is being distributed again? I think that is what balance is all about. So yeah.
I like that. What do you think is the ideal duration for a comprehensive course on transforming workplace culture, leadership, or both?
I think it depends from company to company, organization to organization, and person to person. Sometimes it's quicker, if there is already a healthy culture established and you just need to work out some kinks. Sometimes it needs to be a revamping of the entire scenario. And I remember we spoke about this term in our first conversation, where it was, are we going to go from bottom up or are we going to go from top to bottom when it comes to organization restructuring and the way the culture is being propagated and shared. And so it depends really from person to person, from culture to culture. Uh, there are times when I have worked with companies for about a couple of months, and that's been more than enough. And then there are times which I have noticed a lot of companies, they're kind of hesitant because obviously this is like letting go of the traditions, but there obviously needs to be more work done in terms to ensure that the transition is happening smoothly. We spoke about this. You can't just give ideas and disappear, because then change won't happen. You need to stay with the team and ensure that everything that we decided on is working, or if it is not working, what can we do to shift it to ensure that it aligns well with the company, with the organization, and what needs to be shifted. And so it really depends, I would say, from a couple of months to sometimes a year.
So you said a couple of months to a year then.
Yeah.
It's kind of the range. Okay, great. So let's talk about the next one. And this actually relates to the question I just asked you. And that is, what factors would influence your decision about that ideal duration?
I think one of the things that I often do is I give people an ideal time frame, that this is how long it's going to take. On the time frame that I give them, there is what can like how long it is going to potentially take, plus a couple of weeks. But I also do let them know if there is more work that needs to be done, then we need to be flexible with the timeline. There might be potentiality of us adding a few more weeks. And so one of the things that work into the decision factors is, how deep does this issue run? Is this it's just on the top layer, so you can just skim off the top layer and you can allow the rest to kind of grow naturally? Or is this an issue that's really deep rooted, like it's not just weeds, it's like in the roots of the tree, roots of the organization? Then there potentially needs a lot more work. If everyone from the leader to the management to the employees have this belief system that money is all that matters and our health doesn't, then there needs to be more working, because obviously struggles are coming up. Obviously people are eventually coming to the understanding that this isn't working for me and I need to quit. Right? So there is higher turnover. There are people who are realizing that this is not working for them. Or in some cases, people are literally dying because of overworking. Then something needs to change. And so in a scenario like that, it's much deep-rooted work. And you need to start by, getting out the dry leaves, cutting off the branches, slowly cutting down the tree, ensuring that while this is happening, you're also setting up structures. So you're not leaving them high and dry, but you're also setting up structures that helps them transition and understand the benefit of the transition that we are doing. And not just be like, okay, yeah, I'm going to, get rid of all your systems and then we will start. That's not going to work. That's going to make them feel disappointed, really, because they're like, well, what do we do? Do we have to wait an year to actually start functioning again as a team? Like, no, you have to replace the old with the new and ensure that the new is working while getting rid of the old slowly but surely. When the new starts working, people recognize the benefits of it, and then they are more eager to get rid of the old that wasn't working. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it does. It does. I like that. What formats or delivery methods would be most effective for the kind of training we've talked about?
The best one is in person. I think in person allows you to really be present in terms of looking at people's body language, looking at people's tone, understanding, looking at their expression and see, like, are they resistant to this? Why are they resistant? What needs to be done? What mindset work needs to be done with this particular person? Because once again, it's a two-way street. You can't just work on one aspect and forget the other. And I think in person is the best. You can also then, add intervals where you can have fun. You can get from the high extreme mindset of, oh my gosh, everything's changing, what do we do about it, to come back to normal and bring in the familiar to ensure that there's a good, balance between change and with familiarity. So you're not just jumping into the unknown, you're bringing in the known at multiple points and intervals throughout the day to ensure that it's not a rough transition. But I also work online. And a lot of times the online work, I prefer doing it individually in a scenario when I'm working with people online, when I'm working with organizations online. And when I say individually, it means working with the topmost leader I can get access to, working with them individually, ensuring that they are in a better space to understand themselves and work on themselves and continue that work as we then transition. Because once you work with a leader, let's say, and they have a better understanding of stress management, they have a better understanding of what needs to shift, they have a better understanding of what needs to be let go of. After that point of time, what you can then do is bring in their team, put the leader in there, ask the leader to be like, what do you want to do about this? What are some of the things coming up? And then you are basically supporting them, but you're allowing the leader to be the focal point of having those conversations and still maintaining the respect, still maintaining uh, authority, which is important, but
Mhm.
also ensuring that there is proper communication happening. You're simply facilitating, you're asking questions from time to time, you're encouraging people to speak up, but you're also seeing how the leader is responding in a situation like that. So when I'm working online, it's pretty much starting individually at the top, one on one, then bringing the leader into a team, and then eventually also ensuring that the members of the team have an understanding that if they need support, if they need external support, they can reach out to me and work with me individually as well, to
Mhm.
ensure that it's a balanced approach as opposed to just putting the leader in the in the arena and being like, okay, yeah, here are, you got to fight with all the tools available and you got to fight off this huge monster or this lion, and I'm going to be watching and eating popcorn from the sidelines. That's not that's not the game that we're playing.
It's like, what are the most important aspects that would
Okay,
add value to leadership or culture building, culture development training?
I'm going to do this. I'm going to respond to it, and then you let me know if that is the response you're looking for and if we need to add more into it. uh, from my perspective, I think some of the things that's really important is a lot of people focus on the monetary side of things, but I also prefer looking into the mental health side of things and the emotional health side of things. And so when it comes to investing in leadership, when it comes to investing in training your leaders and training your company and transforming your work culture, it's not just about, well, are we losing out on a lot of our profits, a lot of our revenues by hiring and letting go of and hiring and training multiple times because we have a high employee turnover rate? That, and also, are our employees feeling safe? Are our employees mentally well? Are our employees emotionally well? This needs to be, it's not on the employees to take care of themselves. It is, but also when they're working for you and working in your company, it also becomes your responsibility to ensure that they are being taken care of. They are being supported in their journey. And I say this because a lot of times there is this misconception, and I do not like this myth at all, is a lot of companies, what they do is, oh, you worked hard enough, you're stressed out, you worked really hard for 11 and a half months. We're going to give you a 2 week vacation to your favorite spot. And this is for the favorite employee, for the top employee, right? You get 2.5 weeks of vacation to go enjoy your life. Yay, hurrah, let's go. And then they come back to the same scenario which led them to experience stress in the first place, which led them to burnout in the first place. So if you're not working on what is leading them to experience stress, and not just stress, what is leading them to leave their jobs for whatever reason, if you're not working on that, no matter how much investment you put into ensuring that your employees are feeling rewarded, they are going to quit,
Mhm.
because that's a momentary relaxation before jumping back into the battleground. That's not going to work for a really long time. So yeah, that's my
Right.
response.
I like it. That works just fine. And mostly one of the reasons I don't want to give questions ahead of time, like say, here are the questions so you can answer them well, is I want people to answer in their own way from their own perspective. One of my favorite ideas for a workplace model that I think is amazing is something Daniel Pink talked about in his book Drive. And that is people are basically begging to work are places that have results only work environments, ROWE. And it's brilliant because it's like, I don't care what time you come to work. I don't care what time you leave. I don't care if you come to work. Go to your kid's baseball game. Giving people that balance you were talking about at the beginning about, your work is to make your life possible. It isn't your life is to make your boss rich.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's such a good point. And I completely agree. And here's the thing, I find this, I this is the thing. I see a lot of people turning into entrepreneurs, having their own teams. And I have noticed this pattern that people who have their own teams, like small entrepreneurs, small businesses, at the most medium-sized businesses from 2 to 50 employees, their turnover rate is way less, right? Especially with small-time business owners who have just gotten into this business. They are bringing in those profits, but they're also ensuring that I know this is cliched, but they're also ensuring that their team members feel like this is a second home to them, right? Where
Mhm.
they can have those conversations. And people are not really interested in quitting their job, right? Because their leaders not only give them that, hey, here you go, an amazing environment for you to work in, all the things you would potentially need to achieve success, as well as bring in the profits that we are looking for. But
Mhm.
also, leaders in these positions are mentoring, are coaching them, are ensuring that not only do they succeed, not only do they get really more efficient in their own business so that they don't have to spend like 10 hours sitting in front of a computer. If they can get it done in two, great, let's go. Let's get this done. What can I do as a leader from my own knowledge, from my own experience, to make it so that the 2 hours get turned into an hour so that you don't have to waste your time here. You can spend your time doing passion projects that you absolutely love, that's going to fill your cup, right? I have noticed leaders ensuring that people who have such passion projects are also being coached in that space. They're receiving training from the leaders that if an employee comes up and goes, hey, I'm doing something like this on the side, what are your thoughts on it, can you support me? The leader is not going, how can you? If you have time to do your own stuff, how about spending it in our business so that we grow faster and we scale faster? Like, no, the employee is doing what they can do and they're ensuring that their passion projects are being fulfilled. And in a scenario like that, where the employee is being supported completely, they're less likely to quit. Why would
Mhm.
they quit? They are
Yeah.
getting the time to work not only in what they love and is getting them the big bucks, but also work on something that is not really bringing in revenue, but also fills their own cup. Why would they quit? What
Right.
makes it possible? And in scenarios like this, they are also eager to share that, hey, I'm struggling with this in the workplace. This is something that is leading me to experience stress. What can we do about this? Can we have a conversation about this? Can we see if others in our team is also facing scenarios like this and situations like this? If they are, what can we do to change? They're more eager to share and have conversations. And I've noticed that with small time organizations. And this is not to diss the big corporations. Hurrah, you got there. Amazing. But what can you learn from small business owners and medium sized business owners to then bring it into your own workplace?
Stand up and sing happy birthday and then get back to work. How many
It's
people,
very simple.
yeah, how many people
So,
have ever had that happen? I just invented it now, but can you imagine you're in an office, suddenly everybody in the office, you might like it or not, but you're embarrassed and then everybody chuckles about it. They sit down and get back to work. It was just a delightful, emotionally elevating experience. Everybody had some fun and then they're back to work as usual. It cost minutes of time and yet elevated everybody's morale. So simple.
yeah, I hear you because I think at the end of the day, it's all about, okay, I'm going to be kind of, this is going to sound weird, but it's all about attention.
Mhm.
Can you, on someone's special day, give them the attention that they are in some way, shape, or form expecting, in a way that, oh, it would be good if this happens. But if it doesn't, that's cool too. But just hanging on to that expectation and giving them that attention, that's really huge. And oftentimes people also think, and I think this is so stupid. People, I'm sorry, not stupid. I think it's just weird. Okay, I'm going to say that. I'm not going to say stupid. It's just weird that no one's expecting the company's leader to celebrate everyone's birthday, right? No
Mhm.
one's expecting the CEO to come down and give people days off and give people, like, hey, here's your afternoon off, or I hope you have a lot of fun. Here's a paid day off. Like, no one's expecting that. But
Mhm.
it can be very simple in the way that team leaders of smaller teams can do that. If you're a team leader with people, you have 5 people in your team, 6 people in your team, let's say 10 people in your team, that's just 10 birthdays spread throughout the year. Can you not give the attention at least on that day? They're like, oh yeah, it's your birthday. Let's celebrate. What do you want to do? Go out for a team party? You're going to go out for a team lunch? It's completely honest. Something like that. Or even as simple as, if you don't even want to splurge in that way, as simple as a CEO writing, it's going to sound weird, writing a templatized version of, we are so glad that you're a part of this company. Thank you so much for
Mhm.
spending your year with us. We hope your next year is as amazing, if not more. And we see you, we hear you, we love you, we care for you, XYZ, and the name of the employee, right? And
Mhm.
this thing is delivered to any employee who's celebrating their birthday with a sign from the CEO. That's it. How
Right.
long is that gonna take?
Yeah.
Pretty cheap.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
so the next one here is, can you share your thoughts on the frequency of coaching sessions, weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, that would align best with your needs, those of your clients?
I prefer doing weekly or bi-weekly, to be honest, not more than that. And the
Mhm.
reason behind that being is, when we introduce concepts, when we introduce ways or strategies to make it fun, strategies to manage stress, strategies to transform an organization, there needs to be some time for people to play around with it. There needs to be some time where people first listen to it, accept it, and then implement it. And so, a week, at the most 2 weeks, is something that's really great for them to implement it and figure out what works best and what doesn't. Beyond that, I feel like there comes a point where they start to lose interest in it. And they're like, we did it for 2 weeks, so who cares? Right? They kind of start to lose interest, at least at the very start of the process and the project. Eventually, somewhere down the line, you can slow down the frequency, you can spread out the frequency. But at the very start, I genuinely prefer holding once a week or twice a week coaching sessions to kind of figure out what is working and what isn't working. And oftentimes, at least at the very start, when you introduce a concept, there is going to be a lot of limiting beliefs, such as, oh, this is how things are always done. And to work on those limiting beliefs, we kind of get started with working on the mindset. And so the first couple of weeks are kind of hard, because you're literally battling something that was always known to you, that this is how things work, with, oh, we're bringing in something new. And so that transition can get a bit difficult. And so, at least for the first few months, at least if it is in a really big organization and we are doing it in a project timeline of about an year,
Mhm.
then the first few weeks we do weekly coaching sessions with, and understanding that if you need emergency sessions, you can also book them. So you are in the thick of it, you don't know how to go about stuff, you can book an emergency session if you need it.
Why I want to ask you. So when you say bi-weekly, do you mean twice a week or
Once
twice a
in
month?
2 weeks, or twice
So
a month, twice a month,
twice a
let's say.
month.
Yeah.
I don't know what you want of me. How can you be upset or criticize me for not doing that which I don't know I'm supposed to do, or
Yeah.
that I don't understand what it is to do?
Yeah.
That's
I
a
love that.
huge source of stress right there, right? The
Yeah.
misunderstanding, the gap you were talking about.
Yeah.
So,
And it ties back very well to the example you were giving as well about, Vietnamese malnutrition. People
mhm,
assume that it's okay to get, like, don't all people make shrimp into their food? Oh, is this unique to us? Oh, we didn't know that. And so it's very simple as that, is just the gap.
I have no idea why it works. That does not prevent me from applying the solution without understanding the root cause. So
Yes.
it's interesting to break that paradigm to say you can have no damn clue what the root cause is and still fix it. So,
Yeah.
you could waste a lot of resources trying to find a root cause that you don't even need to. If you got a solution, as long as it's not somehow dangerous, maybe the reason it works the way it does isn't really that important, because what do you want? Is your end result, I want a solution, or I want to know why the solution works?
Yeah.
Right?
I love
Most people
that.
want results.
Yeah. No, I love that, because I think this is a trap a lot of people fall down into, is speaking from a stress management aspect. And with I work with a lot more individuals than I work with teams, because I love working with individuals. One of the things that I've noticed is they get hooked on to finding the root cause, and it's good. It's important, especially when it comes to stress, to understand what is leading you to experience this stress every single time a scenario like this comes up, so that you can kind of unwork and unravel that, and once again replace it with something else that works for you, a new belief system that works for you, or not a new thought pattern that works for you, a new perception that works for you. But it's not just that. Like, when you are so focused on finding the root cause, the stressor, oftentimes it becomes a stressful experience in and of itself. Right?
Yes, that
Because
is the irony.
yeah, because for me, for example, I have health anxiety, and I know that that is because of a trauma that I have from when my father passed away in the hospital because of cancer. And so I know that that exists. But if I were to jump into unraveling my health anxiety, I wouldn't jump into, oh, the trauma, oh, the sadness, the grief, and all that came with it. Yes, but not right away. First, I'll try to kind of make sure that this is how I worked on my health anxiety. It's not completely fixed, I'm not gonna lie. But for me, I was scared shitless of stepping into hospitals. Still am sometimes. You can probably hear the cure in my voice, like, "Ugh." But the way that I started to work on it was not something stressful. I wanted to ensure that this is a process that I can sustain. And so one of the things that I started doing was watching hospital dramas. I know this sounds stupid as hell.
No,
But
actually, it's really interesting.
yeah, but the thing is, there was a point where I couldn't even watch hospital scenes before shifting the movie or walking out of the room, because I was like, I can't do this. I don't have the energy or the mental space to even watch a hospital scene without crying, or without just feeling like I'm back in that situation, without feeling like I'm trapped. And so for a really long time, I wouldn't even do that. But then I started to acclimatize myself. I started to adapt myself by being like, okay, let's watch something that's fun. Like, there are hospital scenes in it, but it's also something fun. So one of the things that I watched was a Korean drama called Hospital Playlist, and it revolved around these 5 doctors or 6 doctors, I think, who had an amazing relationship with themselves. They were really good friends, they were really amazing, and it was really fun to watch them and their relationship. And the hospital scenes kind of became, while traumatizing and while triggering, eventually by the end of the second season, I was pretty okay with watching hospital scenes. I wasn't scared about it. I wasn't
Right.
like, I need to run away from it. Right. And so slowly but surely, I started to acclimatize myself with it. The next step was, okay, yeah, you know what I need to do next? I need to visit a clinic, or I need to visit a hospital for the smallest damn thing, but still go. So I once had an ear infection, and so I went for an ear cleaning at the hospital. Still scared, still wanted to run away, but one step at a time.
What you're talking about,
Yeah.
is it okay if I interject something here?
Yeah, go for it.
What you're talking about is actually called desensitization. So it's a
Yeah.
pretty recognized technique, and it's really good. There's actually a lot of situations where it's super effective. Cognitive behavioral therapy sort of flips that on its head, and it says,
Yeah.
you can spend all your life crying about past things that happened. What's so brilliant about cognitive behavioral therapy is most of it is so simple, like thinking negative thoughts or remembering something negative over and over again is not helping you make your life better. And
Yeah.
just saying, how is this helping me? How do I know this self-doubt is true. Things like that.
Yeah.
It's so brilliant because most of it can be self-administered. Well, could you stop smashing your hand with a hammer? Oh,
Yeah.
that would work.
Exactly. No, I love that. And so one of the things, this is a book called Overcoming Phobias by, it's a practical guide by Patricia Furness Smith. This
Mhm.
book was the starting of me working on my health anxiety, to be honest, because I wanted to work, I wanted to read it out for managing stress and helping other people manage their stress, as well as helping myself manage their stress. And that book was the thing that introduced me to cognitive behavioral therapy. And here's the thing, I think, and it ties in so well with what we're talking about, work organizations and workplace culture and transforming it, is there are new theories, there are new practices that are constantly coming up that one up an already existing one. And it's not in a way to be like, oh, you're disgusting, you're false, but more like this existed, which led us to experience and understand this. So, for example, right now I'm speaking with someone, a dear friend of mine, who's working on neuroplasticity and how that is much better of a theory to help people with their phobias than cognitive behavioral therapy, even. Right.
Mhm.
And so, neuroplasticity and how can we have these new neuronal pathways and stuff like that grow, and how can we grow our amygdala, and it's so cool the way he talks about all of these things, and there is scientific proof behind it and how it is actually linked to yogis and to Chinese medicine and oriental medicine and all of these things. It's pretty cool. And so I think there's always going to be something new that works better than the old. And so are you going to stick around with the old, or are you going to transform and shift into the new? And I get it, change is hard, you're stepping
Mhm.
into the unknown. You don't know if this is going to work. You don't know if this is going to damage it more. And chances are it is going to damage it more before it works better. It's pretty much like healing. A lot of people romanticize healing, but the starting process of healing yourself, at least from the spiritual aspect, it hurts like hell.
Yeah, it can
You,
suck.
it can suck. Oh my God. Like, no one warned me about it, but here I was crying in the middle of the night because I was working on some deep traumas, because I was working on understanding parts of myself that had locked away and kept it in a box and hid away underneath bunches of stuff that I did not want to look at. But when you start your healing, when you start your inner child work and all of these things, and sorry for the woo woo, sorry for all the people rolling your eyes back there. But when you start doing this, it sucks. There's going
Mhm.
to be anger, there's going to be rage, there's going to be emotions at your highest. And all you can do at that point of time is listen. All you can do is understand, because you're going to have questions, and this translates very well to workplace organizations. There are going to be questions from people who potentially quit and heard about, oh, how you're transforming workplace. And they're going to be like, why couldn't they do this when I was there?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, we are doing it now. What can
Right.
we do to bring you back? What can we do to make this process simpler and easier? So you are going to have to handle these difficult conversations at the end of it all.
Right. It's interesting because when you're talking about neuroplasticity, much of my education, my university education, was about neuroplasticity. Neurons that fire together, wire together. And this is why the frequent activation of some behavior that I basically tell all my students, and I don't care what kind of students they are or whether they're clients, the frequency with which you do something fundamentally is what underlies neuroplasticity. That is, if you do it once a week, of course it takes a long time, because the more you fire those pathways, the more those pathways become reinforced, and the more effortfully you do that skill, whether it's with your brain or with your muscles. If it's not
Yeah.
hard, you're not strengthening that system. Struggle, and that is struggle in terms of working at the top edge of your current skill, is how you increase your current skill. It's what produces neuroplasticity, is consistent behavior or consistent patterns of something over and over and over again.
Yeah.
That's
I
what
love that.
neuroplasticity is.
I love that. I'm gonna kind of, can I back on that? Can I piggyback on that just very quickly?
Sure.
Yeah. I think what you said is really powerful, because there is this esoteric principle, which is how we think, so we feel, so we act, right? And that also translates to how our brain works. How we think, prefrontal, so we feel, limbic, brainstem, so we act. And I think the reason why I'm mentioning this is because you just said it. If you behave in a way where you are power posing, or you're standing with confidence, or you're talking with confidence, and sometimes there are scenarios where you know, you watch a lot of your famous YouTubers, you watch your idols talk and, you know, do motivational speeches. And in scenarios like that, if you watch them long enough, you start to replicate the way they speak, you start to replicate the way they behave and the way they stand and the way they talk. And soon enough, you start to feel that same confidence flowing in through you. And it's pretty similar to what you said. You're firing those neurons together, and so they are wiring together. And so you know that if I am ever standing in this position, and I am almost Pavloving myself, but if I am ever standing in this position and I'm ever talking about the subject, I am going to feel confident about it. The more you practice, the easier it gets. And it's pretty much similar to stress management. Is the more you manage your stress, the more you work on your stress management skills, the quicker your response time gets. You're not stuck in the stress response forever. You get out of it pretty quickly. You learn to notice the signs, you learn to notice how you respond to situations, and you learn to notice how your body responds to situations. You get out of it pretty quickly.
And it's one of the fundamentals of neurological health. Like, this is like any kind of stress relief. It may not be meditation, but meditation's so great because anybody can do it regardless of their means, anywhere they want to do it. Of course, you can do different meditations, but by and large, it's just a matter of shutting your brain off and focusing singularly on the moment.
Yes, I love that. It's all about awareness at the very core of it all. Like, I have told people for such a long time, and I've gotten people rolling their eyes, but I was like, you don't need to sit in a spot and close your eyes and meditate for 30 minutes to get the benefits of meditation, where you're trying your level best to stop thinking, because it's not going to work. Because I feel like the more you try to stop thinking, the louder the thoughts become. And so it's about relaxing into wherever you are. You can be sitting in a spot. I sometimes meditate while I'm dancing around, when I'm gardening, when I am sitting in the sunlight, whatever. It can look like anything, but it's about being aware. And when you give yourself, when you give your mind the access and the space to be like, okay, yeah, go. It's going to talk. It's going to talk. And then it's going to calm down, because it's said its piece. It's noticed that you're not resisting. And so it's going to pause. It's going to allow that trickle of thoughts to slow down until you are in silence, right? It can be anything. Meditation is all about being aware of yourself as an individual. It can happen while you're dancing. A lot of people experience this state when they are working out, right? When they're lifting those heavy weights, they notice how their body, how their muscles tenses up and relaxes. They notice all of those things. And that's only possible because they are in that state of awareness. And that can be meditation. Doesn't mean sitting down in one spot and closing your eyes.
What would be most beneficial to people if they need support between those sessions? I
think between the one-on-ones and between the groups, one of the things that I love providing is resources that you can do it yourself. So there are a bunch of resources that you can mix and match and use however you want to use it. Sometimes there are guided meditations, kind of like what we spoke about. But sometimes there are also stress management tactics. There are concepts that have helped me a lot in the past, concepts that I've come up with when people have asked me questions on certain areas or certain problems that they are experiencing. For example, one of those concepts was the idiot box, that I like to call it. And it's not about TV, but rather it's a box where people can randomly, anonymously drop in whatever they're struggling with, their problems in a box. And those problems can then be read out loud in front of the entire team, so that everyone can come up with creative solutions to work on them without the person who put in the solution feeling scared of losing their job or feeling scared of whatever reprimandation could come their way. And so the more you have concepts like these, the easier it becomes for teams to come up with their own unique solutions that can be modified based off of what the base concepts you're providing. They can modify it and use it however they want to use it. And so resources, I feel like, is a really cool way to kind of tie everything up in a nice knot and allowing them to kind of play around with it.
Right. Okay. So then the next part of this would be, ideally, how often should that support be available? In the case of resources, it's just whenever they want to read it or access it.
Yeah.
But if there's support that takes a more active dynamic, whether it's contact with you or contact with somebody else, where they actually need a human being, they need the interaction to support what they're doing. So ideally, how often in that case should that support be available? And I want to emphasize the word ideally here.
Yes.
So in a perfect world, which we are not in, but in a perfect world, how often do you think that sort of support, whatever form it takes, should be available?
Awesome question. So the resources, as you mentioned, I provided at the very start of the project that we do with people so that they have constant access to all the resources provided. However, the one-on-ones that I love doing sometimes, where people can jump on emergency sessions and have conversations with me for 15 to 30 minutes, and this is outside of the one-on-ones and outside of the group sessions, I think I love having it for twice a month. And the reason behind that is you don't want people to get used to your presence and solving the company's problems or situations that come up. You want people to think on their feet. You want people to have those communications with their leaders and not be dependent on an external person to solve those problems for them. And so I prefer doing it twice a month, solely because if it is a personal issue, we'll work on it, but you also need to learn how to think on your feet and come up with solutions or come up with the ways you can have these conversations with people who can potentially support you in changing the scenario. And I know this sounds brutal, but I think it also trains people to, once again, do what we are trying to do in the organization, is to have a healthy work environment enough to speak up and receive support. But yeah, that would be my response. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
good.
no, that's good, because I think there's also the thing that when you give people the space to be like, hey, you can send me a message, you can send me a mail that this is something that you're struggling with, but I will only book a call with you on this particular day on the second week of our conversation, right? Like the second Monday of the second and the fourth Mondays when we will meet every single time for our emergency sessions if you need it. And they have an issue that shows up to them on a Friday, the first Friday of the month. And then they can send you a mail, but then when you give them that time that, hey, there's no rush, we're meeting on Monday anyways, so we'll figure it out. But I trust in you enough to figure this out on your own. I trust you and I believe in you, and I know that you're smart enough to figure this out on your own. If you're not, we are anyways meeting on Monday. So there's not that huge of a gap for us to work on this together. But I would invite you to kind of do this on your own. When you give people that space, when you give people that trust, it's miraculous how quickly their brains start to work. When they know that there is someone supporting them, but also that they know enough to figure this out by themselves.
How do you envision the course, that is essentially what we've talked about so far, helping you or your clients address specific cultural or leadership challenges?
I think it's the growth mindset that we're talking about. I think it comes down to that, is once you kind of get people started on this work, you have to believe and trust that they will take this up further. And I think powerful knowledge and powerful concepts have the way of moving across cultures and moving across organizations, and ensuring that people are getting aware of cool solutions that we are coming up with. And so it's pretty similar to how we have been talking about a lot of cool resources and a lot of cool concepts from people who wrote it way too long ago, right? Where I potentially wasn't even born. People have written concepts like that, and we are discussing them right now in this container that you've created them. And I think it's pretty similar to that. The work that I do, I would much rather not do this. I'm going to be real. It's going to sound really crazy. And what I mean by that is not that I hate doing this work. I absolutely am super passionate about this work. But also, I would ideally love to live in a world where people are not struggling with these core concepts, with these core scenarios which help organizations run smoother, and teams and companies doing the thing and serving people the way that they decided to when they first started out with building up that organization. And so I think it's about the growth mindset. It's about having those conversations and sharing those concepts with people, with leaders, in a way that this journey continues long after I'm gone.
Right. It sounds like a lot of what you're talking about is also just how can you maintain what
Mm.
made you great and what made you grow when you were small?
Yes.
Considering the potential impact on your organization or those of your clients, what pricing model do you think would be most appealing for the training that we've talked about? That is one time, monthly, quarterly, subscription, whatever it is.
I love the concept of monthly payment options, but I also understand the power of subscription. And so one of my goals is, after I have a team of my own that can manage everything that I'm doing, so that I don't have to do the things that I don't love and just focus on things that I absolutely do. I do have a plan. I was planning on launching it this month, to be honest, but then I decided that that will be too overwhelming for me to handle amongst all the other projects that I am on and I'm working on right now. But I do understand the power of subscription, where you have access to resources, you have access to a mastermind, you have access to a space where we can have one-on-one conversations if need be at a really low cost. So it's accessible to everyone. But for the time being, I also think, especially with so the subscription model is a quick fix. It's a band-aid over a bullet hole kind of a scenario, right? For the time being, it stops the bleeding. But and potentially, you will keep changing the band-aid. But if it's like pulling out those weeds we were talking about. But if it is a deep-rooted issue, then a monthly solution is definitely the one that is going to help work on all of these scenarios and ensure that there is a better work environment.
Who do you know who could benefit from or be willing to be interviewed by me on these topics?
I would mention two people. One is my brother, actually. I'm not even going to lie about it. My brother, Arkai Osawara, who is a brand strategist. He is a fractional brand strategist, and he works with teams to kind of ensure that the brand value is being shared in a way that is understandable, and that also helps across organizations. And I definitely think he would be a great person to talk to, because he works with a lot of SaaS founders, he works with a lot of investors. And the other person that I would recommend would be, and I'm going to ask him if he would be up for it, because he's the person who I talked to you about, who I spoke to you about in regards to neuroplasticity and his work on it. Because he works with founders. He has his own book, and he uses breath work and he uses neuroplasticity concepts to train leaders to ensure that when they respond to situations that don't go according to their way, they are able to do so in a way that is not, the fast response that people usually have, which is oftentimes emotionally damaging to other people as well as themselves, but rather it is a response that is thought about and that is carefully responded to.
Flipping the script, who do you know who is looking for guests about these kind of topics for their podcast or summit?
Yes, I'll keep an eye out for that. And I would also love to invite you to, I'm hosting a really big summit in May 2024 called the Freedom Fiesta, where the entire intention is to destigmatize stress and to ensure that people have more conversations and learn from each other about what helps people manage their stress. It's pretty much similar to, oh yeah, stress, it's such a hyped up word, but how do you work on stress? No one has an idea. So my intention is to make it the largest global virtual conference around stress management ever held. And I would love to have you in there to talk from a from a neuroscience perspective, as well as from a perspective of a teacher, on what helps people manage their stress, what
Mhm.
helps people in organizations manage their stress, or what helps students manage their
Sure.
stress. So yeah, I would love to have you in that.
How can I make this interview slash podcast better?
I love that question. Thank you so much for asking it. My only suggestion would be to start off with an introduction so that we can get into the flow of things. Pretty good. I loved it. I loved the experience. I love geeking out about neuroplasticity, neuroscience, and yeah, it was a really amazing experience. Thank you so much, Tim, for having me here. It was a really wonderful opportunity.